And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. And today we have a chance to talk to a good friend of ours, and that is Fleet Master Chief retired Ray Kemp, calling in from Dallas, Texas. Fleet Master Chief, how are you today?
Ken, I'm motivated. Monday is my absolute favorite day of the week. Every week, never stops. And then you have the opportunity to chat with you here on Martin Luther King's holiday, Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, just for our audience, why don't you do a 30-second sum up of your career? We met you at New York City Fleet Week when you were an NCO aboard the USS Kearsarge. Tell us a little bit about your career, which reached a very high pinnacle in the U.S. Navy.
Sure. So I joined the Navy in 1986. And interestingly, here on Martin Luther King Day, 1986, this happened to be the first day we celebrated that day as a national holiday. I remember vividly the states that, or some of the states, I should say, that did not celebrate that day, just because it was the time that I entered in and so forth. But so I joined the Navy, entered in San Diego, went to an aircraft carrier, went to boot camp in San Diego, went to an aircraft carrier in Philadelphia, USS Independence. Fantastic ship, but I knew then I enjoyed the aircraft carrier. So throughout my career, I served on many different ships, 3 aircraft carriers, by the way. Harry S. Truman is where I was the Command Master Chief. And it really exposed me to a great deal of personalities and different backgrounds of people. I really enjoyed the opportunity to connect folks and get them to interact together, towards the mission, and it's super important. As a Navy, we are mission oriented, but we're always, so mission first, people always is our perspective. And then when I retired 33 years later, I was the Fleet Master Chief of Europe and Africa, and responsible for about 60,000 or so folks on those 2 continents, and the waters, of course, surrounding it. So very interesting career for a young man from El Reno, Oklahoma, but it was certainly had its moments of meritocracy that worked out in my favor.
Absolutely. Now, today, the day we remember the extraordinary life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What does it mean for you today to celebrate Dr. King's birthday?
Well, Ken, again, being from Oklahoma, and it just so happens there are a lot of ministers in my family. I was born in the 60s, raised in the 70s, so many of the men that I was around had actually marched with Dr. Martin Luther King, including my pastor growing up, which also meant that they endured some of the struggles and persecution that he endured as well. And so for me, as I cast an eye back into time and think about those men and women who just did tremendous things for our country, and particularly for the way that Black people are treated and respected throughout the country, it's important for me to pause, especially for Dr. King, because he was in a very key position when it comes down to being esteemed by the government, to the point to where they were listening, and he was able to negotiate change that was very important that we enjoy today. So to have the opportunity to celebrate Dr. King, it's each and every time, especially me.
Absolutely. Now, we're all trying to, I know I feel in my own case, just trying to understand what happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And, I think in terms of being appalled, devastated, I mean, I've spent time in the Capitol and, doing different projects. I remember the time we actually ran into then Vice President Biden in the Capitol when he was walking through. And to see what happened, what was your reaction? What was your perspective on what happened in Washington?
Well, I was shaken, Ken, like I think many of our colleagues were, who have served in Washington, D.C., or even those who have visited and had intimate relationships with people there. It really caught me off guard. A riot and an insurrection, people charging into the capital of our nation. It reminds me, though, it was Dr. King who said the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. And so though that just cataclysmic event happened on January the 6th with our countrymen attacking the nation's capital, we're seeing, true leaders stand up during that time. And as someone whose perspective, stays on leadership, I'm excited. I'm excited to see those people, the National Guardsmen who are in place right now. I just listened to the two-star general speak on the news, and he's very confident with his capabilities of his team, and he's communicating with great clarity to the people there in the Washington, D.C. area, letting them know that they are prepared and that there will be peace. And by the way, it's only going to last a few more days, and then folks will go on back to the normalcy of Washington, D.C. But that's just a long way of saying, Ken, it broke my heart, to see, those folks acting in such a way. But it was pretty emotional. It elevated some anger in me as well, I must admit.
Absolutely. One of the commentators talked about the awe that he feels every time he goes into the U.S. Capitol for a meeting, and that's really the way I feel about it. And hopefully we can return to some sort of normalcy. I'm thinking back to a happier time, an inauguration that you participated in as a leader of the U.S. Navy enlisted sailors at inauguration. In fact, you were featured in the New York Times with your daughter in a wonderful picture at one of the inauguration balls. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yes, Ken, so you're right. In 2008, I was selected to be the Armed Forces Inauguration Committee by the CNO, at that time, Admiral Roughhead. And in the 56th inauguration of the 44th president, it was an honor to get a chance to participate in all of those things. So from the concert on the Mall, which hadn't happened in the way that they had done it, to the Childrens Inaugural Ball. I had the opportunity to take my children to that. As a matter of fact, the photo that you're talking about was myself and Mahogany. She was on my shoulders, and it was kind of a relaxed mode. I mean, probably the only photo I can think of where my uniform was in a relaxed position. My necktie was loosened, and she draped over my shoulders. And the funny thing, she just turned 22 years old. I mean, so time is certainly moving since then, but it was an amazing event and opportunity to meet President Obama, Michelle, the girls, as well as the entire team. Joe Biden was probably the most down of everyone. Joe Biden was probably the most down to earth of all of them during the march, the presidential march, when they get out of the motorcade and they start walking. They do that, by the way, at the Navy Memorial, because Jimmy Carter started that tradition. Of course, he was in the Navy, but anyway, so they get out of the car and they start walking. And Joe Biden was so engaging to the sailors, to myself, to everyone, that it was like, man, he's like one of the guys. And so it's interesting, someone as wicked smart as he is, to also be so down to earth, and now very thankfully tomorrow to be our president. What an interesting time.
Absolutely, and we will look forward to the inauguration this week. And tell us a little bit. You're doing work now under Kemp Solutions, writing, speaking on leadership and communications, and what you learned in the Navy. First, tell us a little bit about you mentioned you moved up the ranks to a very senior level in the Navy. The Navy is a very diverse organization, as is all branches of the military. Representatives of all parts of American society and immigrants too that join the military to have a chance to become citizens. Tell us a little bit about how you managed to help everyone learn to work together.
So, Kim, from my perspective, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so what I found is that when I made relevant connections with people, maintaining relevant relationships, then there's a measure of sincerity, authenticity that comes forward. And then that will bring down some of the communication barriers, socioeconomic, ethnic, gender barriers, and allow you to communicate at a level that's just different than when those barriers are up. And so it's my encouragement to people, to leaders in particular, to express that level of care without any inhibitions so that they can communicate at a higher level. And once you begin to communicate with people, then you can have an impact on their attitude, their beliefs, on their character, and then their commitment to excellence. And so it's that level of care that I think intentionally woven into leadership that creates an environment where people will, no matter what their background is, what the difference is between the groups of people, they'll go hard for you. They'll go, as they say, they'll go hard in the paint. You know, they'll work really hard. They'll be loyal. They will stick to it, you know, until the end, and they'll sacrifice themselves for the overall unit, and that's what's super important. In the Navy, we have a saying: it's a shipmate, and then self. And the only way for that to be a true means of lifestyle is for the level of care to be there, in place, and believable.
Actually, I spent time this past week, I mentioned to you, with a bunch of the number of top football coaches, and they all said exactly what you just said is the key to organization. Several use the same phrase, that people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. I think 3 or 4 of the coaches said that same thing, and the need for communications is so important. And so good point, well said, as always. You have some writing that you're working on, and we're looking forward to your memoirs coming out later this year, but you've got some writing on perseverance. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
I will. So I had the opportunity I just went over the 1-year anniversary of writing for this magazine called Vivid Magazine. It's a nice, small publication out of headquarters out of Pensacola. So I've written several articles for them. As you know, I was part of the national security leaders for Joe Biden, and published an op-ed. I think it was posted in Medium and several other newspapers around the country. But yes, I'm working on a ebook I'm going to publish just on perseverance. The perspective of a warfighter very different than many others, often compared to athletes, but the mindset that we have, the focused intensity that we apply, allows us to persevere at just a higher level than the average person who hasn't been put in those situations. And I think that the techniques that we use are worthy of applying and sharing with the civilian in a non-life-threatening situation, but to apply those very same tools, I think it would be useful for them. And I hope it's an interesting read. And it's not really, from my perspective, it's not about making a lot of money off of it, but it is about getting a message. Because in the end, Kemp Solutions is really about changing the workplace in such a way that it changes the world. You go to work and you get treated with dignity and respect, and then you teach the folks in the workplace to do the same thing. And then imagine when they go back to their communities and they treat everyone with dignity and respect, and we can bring a measure of peace and a higher level of communication to one another in communities around the world.
Absolutely. Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp retired from the U.S. Navy after 33 years service.
Yes,
is that correct? And we enjoyed
yes,
so much being at your retirement ceremony on board the USS Harry Truman down in Norfolk. What a spectacular send-off that was from your shipmates and from the U.S. Navy. And perhaps just a final thought for us today.
I would, if it's okay, and I'm happy to be here on Martin Luther King Day. Kim, with you, good. Again, I was talking to someone the other day about our relationship, known you since 2006, and the Fleet Week that you mentioned. Man, what an incredible time that we have had, and it's been an honor to share time on the air with you and off. And today, if I could just kind of go out with this. So Dr. King said that love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy to a friend. And I think if we express love, particularly in these times, as we discussed with the events on 6th January, with the social unrest and Black Lives Matter that we are still making our way through, and the economic strife, oh, by the way, COVID, I think if we express love that measure of care, if we express love to one another without looking for anything in return, then we can make this world, certainly, and our nation, a better place.
Well, Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp, always a pleasure to talk with you, especially on this very important day, the celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And always a pleasure. You have so much perspective to offer from your 33 years experience in the U.S. Navy. A pleasure. You have a great day.
Thank you, Ken. You too.
Okay, this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio, and we are based at Post 135 in White Plains, New York, and heard every Monday at 2:30 on WVOX New Rochelle, New York. Again, thank you to Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp, and for Sons of the American Legion Radio from White Plains, New York, this is Ken Kraetzer.